Welcome to answering all of your questions about studying abroad. I cannot wait. There are so many questions that I've gotten over the past few months that are just like in comments and on Instagram and stuff like that that I want to answer, and let's get into it. Okay, let's get right into it. So the first one that I get is why I chose to study abroad in Ireland, and I actually made a whole separate video on why I chose Ireland specifically for my program and what you should be looking into if you're considering studying abroad. So for that question in particular, I'll direct you towards my separate video that goes over all of the things that you should consider when thinking about studying abroad. Okay, second, the application process. So what was my application process like? How long did it take? All that good stuff. So I actually went through a separate third-party program called USAC, and you have to apply through USAC, and you also have to apply to the school that you're going to attend. So you apply on their website or through your school's website. Sometimes different schools have different kind of deals with each other where they exchange students every semester. So it really depends on what school you're at your home university and what school you're also applying to, and then you have to apply through USAC, or there are a couple of other third-party companies that do study abroad, and maybe your study abroad team at your home university works through them, or maybe you're going directly through your school and getting that swap through the school that you're going to at home. So it's really honestly program dependent. For USAC, it took honestly maybe less than an hour to apply. It was not that long of a process. You just have to have all your materials ready and just kind of go through the files and stuff. And then I knew within about, I think, 2 months if I got accepted. And then I also heard back from the university that I was attending abroad, because I had to apply to them separately. So then I also heard back from them, and then I was able to work with my home university to pick out classes that were transferable and stuff like that. And on that note, I would say, pro tip, is that if you're studying abroad later in your college career, that I would stack all of the general ed classes, or all of the classes your art classes you can take anywhere, and English classes you can actually take a lot of places, and business classes you can take pretty much anywhere. So I would stack all of the classes that you know are likely to have a lot of options while you're abroad and that will be transferable while you're abroad. What I did was, I did plan to go abroad in my junior year, but I didn't really plan my classes accordingly, so I did have to take some heavy biology classes while I was studying abroad, which was okay, and they were transferable and stuff like that. But I did have to work with my home university to make sure that it was all gonna kind of line up and work when I came back. Another one of the questions that I get is how much study abroad actually costs, and it will be different for every program. I know that's not very helpful, but I'm gonna make a separate video breaking down my finances, how I kept track of my spending, what I was budgeting for all of my travel and stuff, and that will be a lot more detailed specifically on the financial and budgeting side, so I'll leave that for a later video. But generally speaking, your housing and your tuition will be slightly different, and it really depends on the program. It depends on your home university. For me, going through USAC to UCC from Cal Poly Humboldt, our program was set up so that we paid through Cal Poly Humboldt, and our tuition was the same pretty much as it was at our home university for that semester, and then the only additional cost was really the housing. That was separate from what we would usually pay. The next question that I get a lot is about culture shock, and honestly, I feel like my experience, I had been to Ireland before I studied there, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. I knew what to expect, and it is kind of nice because in Ireland, one of the main languages is English, so I didn't have to learn a new language to feel like, I could really function there, which was good. But I would honestly say that the culture shock was really in just the little things. I know for some people, driving on the left side of the road is a really big deal, and I actually left Ireland preferring driving on the left side of the road. It just makes more sense to me in my brain for whatever reason now, and that was a little funny. But other than that, I feel like the culture shock was very minimal for me. The bar scene, the pub scene in Ireland, is obviously different than what you would find in the United States, because it is different, right? That is a big part of the culture there. You definitely don't have to drink if you're studying abroad in Ireland. Going to somewhere where they do drink a lot it's different, but if I didn't want to drink, I would just get like a Sprite or something. It's like dealer's choice, you know, like what do you want to do? And if you don't want to be a part of that part of the culture, that's okay. Like you don't have to. And I feel like people kind of have a misconception about that when it comes to Ireland, and that there's like constant pressure to do that, and there's not. At least with my friend group, like it obviously does depend on the type of people that you're surrounding yourself with, but I feel like it was pretty easy to navigate through the pubs and the club scene. In terms of culture shock in general, I would say the drinking culture is just a lot different there, and that was probably the biggest change for me, and driving on the left side of the road. But that, some people think that's a huge deal and some people don't. Honestly, I would say I got more culture shock coming back to the US from Ireland, because our food in the US is different, and when you go over there it doesn't seem that different, but it is so much more inexpensive to purchase fresh organic groceries. But it only hit me when I came back to the US and realized just how abnormal the prices over there were, and just how abnormal the quality of the food over there is. Abnormal in a good way over there. Here, our food system is not great. That would be, I think, the tipping point is when I came back, not when I went over there. Alright, the next one is something that I get asked a ton whenever anybody is considering going to study abroad, whether it be in Ireland or somewhere else. They ask about housing, how you found housing, or how I found housing, and we had a bunch of options through USAC. USAC worked with UCC to provide housing for the exchange students, and there was an option to stay with an Irish family and be like an exchange student, or you could live like in a UCC affiliated dorm that was off campus. I chose to stay in a dorm off campus. There was a couple of different options. There's Ashland Nido, Ashland Broga, Crow's Nest, Bottle Works, all sorts of stuff, like all sorts of different apartment complexes that are through UCC and through USAC. They help you get housing. That will again depend on the university that you're going to and that you're coming from, and the program that you're working with to study abroad. And then the pricing is obviously going to be a little bit different depending on your type of housing situation. This next one is interesting because my perspective is skewed, right? I only know my experience of going to elementary, middle school, and high school and college, the places that I personally have been. And that's not to say that every college in the US is a certain way, or every college in Ireland is a certain way. However, the school system in Europe as a whole, from my understanding, minus Sweden, is less rigorous than that in the US. And I even have a friend who's actually studying abroad in New Zealand right now, and she's having the same realization that the US school system is a lot of work. It is a lot of work here. And as a student from the US, I'm used to waking up at 7, getting to class at 8, being in class from 8 to 3 or 4 or 5 p.m. and being in labs every week, twice a week sometimes, having classes that are 3-hour-a-week lectures that you have to go to, having up to 4 or 5 classes that you're putting into a semester, and then you get home from your 8 to 5, and then you work from 5 to 9, and then you gym, shower, go to bed, wake up, repeat, right? There's a lot of homework that's involved in the US school system, and smaller assignments that are included and required of us. The school system in Ireland is vastly different. There are maybe one, maybe two big assignments throughout the whole semester, and then the majority of your grade is based on the final exam, which happens at the very end of the semester. So that's both good and bad, because on one hand, there's really no homework besides readings. I was in a couple philosophy classes that had readings weekly. That's it. So when you're thinking about how you as a person work and how you function within a school system, it can be a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because in the US, if you do poorly on one assignment, it probably won't reflect in your final grade, because you have cushioning throughout millions of assignments, right, throughout the whole class, and you have quizzes, and you have little lab projects, and you have homework that's graded, and you have big tests that are graded, and it's all kind of clumped into one, right? Maybe it's weighted differently, but still, if you don't do too hot on one thing. If you're doing well overall, it kind of evens itself out, right? In Ireland at UCC, that is not the case. If you do poorly on your big exam, that's your grade. So that is a little bit of a different system than we're used to in the US, because obviously there's more weight on one big thing at the end instead of smaller weights added up over time. Again, that really depends on the type of person that you are. Some classes don't even have assignments, period. They just have the final exam and that's your grade. So that does put a lot of pressure and a lot of weight on that final exam, but if you're happy with doing the trade-off of having no homework really throughout the semester and then really cramming for a month to do that final exam, that can work well for some people. But for some people it also doesn't work well, so I understand both sides, I think. Additionally, the grade scale is a bit different. A 76% or a C, like a 75-76%, that converts to an A in the US. So the passing grades are anywhere from 40 to 60%, and it can be different depending on the class. So passing would be like a C or a D, right? And that to us seems really low. In the Irish school system, getting above a 70% is like great work. It's really odd, and you have to kind of readjust your brain to be like, okay, 76%, that's okay, that is good. Teachers have to assess it themselves, and they give you kind of a preliminary grade, and then they send that assignment to a board. I don't know who the board is, but they basically look at the assignment and they look at the preliminary grade and they say, yes, this grade matches, or no, this grade does not match. Send it back, retry, give it a different grade. And I heard rumors that there was a girl that a teacher wanted to give an A to, and like this professor wanted to give this student an A in the Irish school system, and the professor submitted that grade to the board and the board said, we don't give A's here, like do it again. Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's a weird adjustment, but at least for USAC, there are a couple of helpful things that you can look at when it comes to the school system that you're working within. So there are a couple of different ways that you can use USAC to look at the grade conversions between your university and the university that you're studying at abroad. So that's helpful, and I would recommend sending that to your study abroad office back at your home university. I'm gonna do another one of these videos answering your guys' questions, and a couple of the videos that I mentioned earlier that I'm going to take some of the questions that we talked about and expand on them, because there's a lot more to say about them. But until then, if you have any more questions at all, please let me know in the comments. I love answering the comments, so it's super fun for me. Let me know about that, and yeah, I will see you all next time.